What is going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Masculine Health Solutions podcast. We talk about everything men's health. Today, I got the honor of having Scott Friedman on the podcast, talk a little bit about mindset, achieving the goals you want. And honestly, I think this is perfect because it's coming in right at, around the January 1st kind of time where everybody wants to make big changes. But one of the things that we kind of, usually forget about is the mindset involved in making these changes. And that's where Scott comes in. First and foremost, Scott, how are you today, man?
I am doing great, man. I appreciate being here. I appreciate the allowing me to be on the show because I know we had a little snafu on my part earlier. I appreciate being here, man. This is gonna be great.
Hmm. And again, I'm a little bit nasal today, so if I sound different, it's good old cold.
And I'm always nasally, so that's just how I sound. So sorry.
Yeah, it's all good then. It's all good. First and foremost, Scott, man, what kind of got you into like coaching people? And what was your backstory into, training and that?
It was two things specifically. One is so in high school, I was this like really scrawny kid, like skin and bone kid. But I was always like, you could always like kind of see like the abs because there was no fat and no muscle at the same time. So like, oh, I'm looking good. So I got a little bit into sports like track and field. A bunch of the older guys would lift, so I'd lift with them. But really, there was two things. One was a massive fear of getting fat. I had like from like the age of like 14 on, I don't know what. And there's no like reason. I saw it. I was like, nope. I'll always be in shape the rest of my life. But I had a major fear of, so I took into fitness. I took into working out, playing sports, just kind of getting in there. And then in college, I was getting my degree in physical therapy. And at the time I was like, okay, it's just a master's program. Now it's a doctorate program. And I realized in short order, number one, I suck at organic chemistry. That was not my thing. I didn't care about it at all. I got like the D- in that class. I mean, it was the hardest class ever. But I also realized that a physical therapist sits behind a desk. They deal with, and not this is a bad thing, but it wasn't my thing, is they deal with a bunch of broken people all the time. Can't move my arm, can't move my leg, let's focus on this. And I realized very quickly that that was not something I wanted to do at all, period. I was like, I want to be on the front lines. I want to make sure they don't get to that point. So preventative. And I had no idea. I mean, I knew personal trainers were a thing. I didn't know you can go to school for personal training, which I don't recommend. I don't recommend going to school for personal training. I get a business degree or something. But so I realized I can switch my major to kinesiology, which is in fact personal training. And then from there, I was like, I want to coach people. I want to help people achieve their goals. It's easy for me. I understand it. It came really easy. And I was like, hopefully I can make this easy for everyone else. And that's kind of the journey.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that too. It's almost like you realize these things halfway through where you're like, oh, wait a minute, physiotherapy is kind of like, that's when you're already beaten and battered, right? But for some reason, I mean, I had that same belief too, like, oh, physiotherapy is where it's at, but it's almost like that's after the accidents, that's more geriatric care, or obviously rehabbing from like injuries and stuff, but it's almost like the preventative side, which you mentioned before, right? It's almost like I want to make sure I'm on the front lines. What was one of the biggest benefits from actually being on the front lines and actually helping the people out that you actually, the population that you actually wanted to target?
I think the number one benefit is that there is a real visceral response to seeing someone achieve their goals and being like, and basically being the main catalyst. Obviously you didn't do it for them, but like you're the main catalyst for that. And like when they thank you, they give you the hug, they're crying, like it is a really great feeling that like I am doing something that at least matters to one other person. I've at least helped in this short span of time someone else do something that was clearly a very emotional thing for them. So, I've trained hundreds of people, right? So I've had this feeling with a lot of people, and that is one of the best parts of being on the front line of it is like, I work with a client who was 400 pounds, and although I didn't finish with them, they lost like 80 pounds with me. And I was like, all right, like this is great. Like it was just this really great feeling that I was doing something that made a difference, because you also don't see when they lose weight or they get healthier, they're living a better life, which means they're passing it on to their family and their friends, and they have a better mood or better energy and all that stuff. So I do think that is a major component to why, because I do love mentoring people with that. So that's kind of a huge, that's what I love about being on the front lines with it.
You know what the thing is too, it's almost like you talk about that impact. I think when we're long and gone, I've been thinking about this a lot, right? Because I don't know, like as of late, I think about death and stuff, and it's almost like, it's almost like that legacy factor of just like, bro, like I could go do like some boring 9 to 5, which I do, but I do the online coaching thing as well. And the beauty of it is like, bro, you just impacted this guy's life forever, right? And it's not just that, it's almost like his kids are gonna remember the fact that, oh no, my dad was fat, then he worked with somebody, he got in shape. or, he was having issues and he wasn't that good. And then all of a sudden, he got in shape and his life actually changed, which is one of the biggest things I think is the legacy factor of you're actually changing these people's lives forever. Right. I think that's probably one of the most underrated things when it comes to coaching and getting people into best shape. But one of the things that's always kind of missing, and that's kind of where your expertise comes in, is mindset. How huge is mindset, and where do you start? You know what? Let's start off with why does mindset even matter when it comes to getting into shape or anything that you want to do in life?
So I'll be the first to say, there's gonna be people out there who are like, they disagree, and that's their field, and that's great. I can name a couple already who are like, listen, whoever listens to this, like, that's wrong. But my perspective on this in the field, I've been a trainer for a decade. I've been doing this for a fairly long time at this point, and I believe mindset is important because you could give someone the best workout program on the number one Arnold workout program. Like, here it is. And if you follow this, you'll have a six-pack abs. I can give someone the greatest diet I take from keto, paleo, whole I mix everything together and I give you the perfect diet for longevity. And a lot of people will be given that stuff and they will still not see results. And the question was basically, I was like, why is this happening? Why are some people succeeding and why are some others not succeeding? And what it came down to was some people, and it's intangible, are having some sort of obstacle block them from doing it. There's something happening. And I'm not getting to the psychological aspect, but like, what's stopping you? Like, why is that happening? Because it is happening. So you have all these diets out there. We are from 2000 to 2020, the dates are a little off, but we grew in obesity in the United States by 12%, grew by 12%. And yet we have better technology. We have more trainers, a bigger industry. We know way more about the body, and yet we're losing the fight. Heart disease is the number one cause of death. 1 in 4 people die every year in the United States from heart disease, which is directly related to obesity, hypertension, all those things from being obese and overweight. And so how does this keep happening? Well, I think there has to be some sort of mental barrier that is not perceived by the person who's trying to get help, and it's stopping them from achieving their goals. And I'm not talking about getting your psychology degree but there are common sense things that we can break down and say, well, wait a second. You said this, like, for example, or this is a great one. I had a client come to me, hey, I want to work out with you. Okay, here's the price. Oh, that's too expensive. It's like, okay, let's break that down. Is it too expensive? How often do you go out drinking every weekend? Well, twice a week. Okay. How much is a beer if you go to a Chicago Cubs game, right? Any baseball, $10 a beer. We have no problem paying for certain things. $1,000 for a new iPhone or $2,000 for a new MacBook. Again, there is a use case. There's value in there. But what most people will do sometimes is they will have some sort of obstacle and then create a rationalization for why they can't do what they have to do. I don't have the energy. I don't have the money. I don't have the time. I don't have this. And very seldom are they actually real issues. Like, obviously there's someone out there, there are people out there, but like for the most part, it's overused excuse. That comes from a mental issue. That comes from something that's blocking their ability to just work hard. Because I was that guy, right? I didn't believe any of this crap. I came out of college, fraternity president, good, very in shape my whole life, a varsity athlete. I'm like, just work hard, stop being a loser, and you're going to be fine. But it just doesn't work for so many people. And the question is, why doesn't it work? And I came down to, there's got to be something blocking them mentally, and that's kind of where it comes from. So I think that's why it's important, because if you're having trouble, it's coming from up here. It's not coming from physical.
Yeah, and to your point, one of the things that has stuck out to me a lot when you said that was, you're right. When we want something, we'll spend money on it. If you really want something bad enough, it's like, yeah, I'll spend the money on it. I'll spend the time on it, whatever it is, right? And to your point, it's like people are lining up for hours to get a MacBook. But some people are just like, it's, you tell them to go to the gym for half an hour. It's like, well, I don't have time. And that's kind of the irony. It's like, well, what are you willing to invest into getting what it is that you want? So it's almost like that hierarchy of needs almost gets changed into the hierarchy of wants, or it's
Ooh, that's a good, I like that. I mean, if you think about it this way, it's not a price issue. It's or a time or an energy issue. I don't perceive this to be the value issue. There's no value in it for me, because like money's a terrible one, because like I can literally tell you right now, hey, like, I need $10,000. I don't have that money. Okay, how about I give you the keys to a $100,000 car if you give me $10,000? I'm pretty sure everyone here would find a way to pay to get the keys to the car. So it's not a money issue. Time. I don't have time. Okay, look on your phone. How often are you scrolling on Instagram? Sure. Right? Because you don't need an hour. You just need 10 minutes. Like, you just need 10 minutes. And you can also do it while you're on Instagram. So there's very logical arguments against it. It's just a value. They don't value it. They say they value it, but there's something holding them back. And that's kind of where where I
Yeah,
come
where you
in.
kind of come in because it's interesting. It's like anything that you do, if you put a value on it, it's almost like everything can be changed, right? And it's kind of like that reframe, I guess, is what you concentrate on. It's like, hey, would you like to spend 5 years alive? Or would you like to have 5 years more of life so you can spend it with your kids? And all of a sudden it's like, shit, it's like, yeah, okay, maybe there's some truth in this, maybe there's some change that needs to happen. How do you go about? What are some of the strategies that you go about in making sure that you can be the catalyst that gets them started?
Yeah, so I will say I don't have like a standard, like if they say this, go with this. I kind of just I have to just listen to what they're saying. And sometimes I'm wrong with the actual reason. Sometimes they lie to me. They don't realize they're lying, but I really just explore what they're saying. And there's a couple things, right? Number one is what you just mentioned is the intangibility of death. Is the intangibility. I believe, and someone on the show, correct me if I'm wrong, feel free to comment and blast me. I'm pretty sure the number one reason older people go bankrupt is medical bills. They cannot afford medical bills when they get in their 70s, 80s, 90s. The caveat here is that, like, well, I mean, could those bills have been avoided if you had kept up with your health in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s?
Most
And
likely.
I would argue, yeah, 100% you can, because the evidence is there that fitness is just all courts better for reducing all long-term chronic disease.
Yeah.
So that's number one is like, look, like, it's intangible right now, but like when you have your grandkids, do you want to be able to watch them or do you want to be in a wheelchair? I mean, it's negative, but sometimes that's what's needed. Because me, that's a huge factor. Like I want to be around for my kids and my grandkids and even my great grandkids, so I can play, so I can help, so I can do all these things. I'm big on that. Like that's a huge motivating factor for me, but it might not be for my client. So I could say that, see if it hits, and I kind of go from there. But what I try and do is I break down what they're saying. So for example, as a trainer, uh, people always come to you. I want to lose weight. I
Yeah.
want to lose 20 pounds. Okay, so I have to be able to read between the lines. So what are they actually saying when they say they want to lose 20 pounds? What they're actually saying is I want to look better. And I think 20 pounds is going to get me to look a lot better than what I look like now. And the reality is, well, you don't want to lose 20 pounds because that would include muscle. And then the second reality is that you want to lose fat. So now we got to focus on losing fat. And how do you lose fat? Well, you can lose fat or you can build muscle. So what they're really asking me to do is to help them build muscle so they can lose fat, right? So you have to break down the steps of what they're saying. When they say, I don't have time. Okay, well, what's your job like? What's going on? What's your family? What's your situation like? I don't have energy. Well, when do you try and work out? What's going on? Do we have to shift when you try? So all I do is ask questions to get a frame and understand the narrative they're using, right or wrong, good or bad, whatever it is, so that I can make a good recommendation. Because I don't like the whole, if they say this, go with this. I don't do that because it just doesn't work and people can see right through that. I will literally spend hours with someone trying to figure out what is stopping you. And by the way, I might not be the best person. Like I might say, look, I might not be able to help you because this is so, you can talk to this person. I'll refer you out to someone I know. But that's what I do. And so I go step by step of, okay, what's going on, and on the other side of that. So now you figured out what's going on. You at the same time concurrently, what are your goals? Like seriously. So let's iron out what you do. So I call it's a 3-step approach I take is okay. What's your goal? Let's hammer out what you want to its bare bones. I call it what everyone calls them SMART goals: specific, measurable, attain, relevant, timely, all that, whatever the acronym is. We go hammer SMART goals. Step 2 is hammer your reasons why. And I think this is a huge aspect. I'm a big believer in your reason why. I think that it is a motivating driving force because motivation's fleeting. Motivation will not last. Motivation has like a 2-week span in your life. Hence, 75% of people on New Year's resolutions give up after 2 weeks. That's a 2-week motivator. But your reason why is around forever. If you want to lose 40 pounds and you can come up with 25, just fill out a piece of paper, 25 reasons why. And it doesn't matter how ridiculous the reason is, as long as it's important to you, that's what we focus on. So if you're the guy, like, look, I was that guy. I wanted to look awesome on the beach. I want every single person to double take me and be like, whoa, 6-pack, looking good. Like, and that might be a vain reason, but like, that's still if you believe in that reason and you're willing to work for that reason, that's great. Let's do it. List out your reasons why, get emotional about it. And then step 3 is the action items. What's the smallest action I can take today or tomorrow to move myself in the right direction? Just one step, just one step, just one step, until eventually I've taken a mile worth of steps and you're way farther than where you were without even realizing you're there. So that's kind of on the contrary method. So I break down the fear and then I also build up the goal.
Interesting. And you know what the thing is too, the two biggest motivating factors are usually fear, what is it again? Fear and love, right? So it's either you're running away from fear or you're running to love, right? And then for the most part, it's like as humans, it's fear that's usually the thing that really gets us going. The fear of death, the fear of losing something, the fear of losing what we already own, it's almost it's kind of strange in that sense, but that's basically human nature, and that's kind of where the psychology of humans kind of comes into play. And to your point, you're right. The whole motivation factor, I think, is just garbage because it's kind of, it's like, okay, cool. People are hyped up for like a week or two, and then they're like, yeah, okay, I fell off and I'm back on the couch. Like I'm back to watching whatever it is that I watch, a Cubs game, and I'm just drinking beer, enjoying my time. But you're right, man. It really does come down to those two biggest factors that really get us going or don't.
Yeah, and to go back to motivation, it's just like I think that the flaw with motivation, we're fed this again. Motivation is not a bad thing, but it gets you. So motivation is like your first 2 weeks, and then discipline is like the rest of it. It's everything else to be on. And the reason that's so important to understand is that if you go into a goal, like, again, whatever let's say you want to run a marathon, and you go into that thinking you're going to be motivated the whole time, you're going to think something is wrong
Yeah.
when you let's say you wake up on Saturdays at 6 to go running, and let's say it's the fifth time you're doing it. So if you're that day, it's gonna come. Like at some point it comes, you're not motivated to get up and do it for whatever reason. You're gonna think something's wrong, and then that's going to potentially spiral you to not do it anymore because I just don't feel motivated. But if you take that out and say, look, you don't need to feel motivated, you just need to do it. And that's that's the narrative. It's like if you think feeling good, feeling like you want to do something all the time is how you should be in order to achieve a goal, you will never achieve a goal, period. You have to rely on building the habits and the routine that keep you going because not a single person, maybe except for David Goggins on this planet, is motivated at 5 a.m., snowstorm, 0 degrees, have to ice up your car, sit in your car for 10 minutes, then drive 10 minutes to the gym, get to the gym, 10 minutes to change and get ready, and then you have to do it out. No one wants to I don't want to do that. That's what I have to do. I don't want to do that, but I do it because it's something I do now because I built that routine, I built that habit, and when I don't do it, it feels weird. I'm not motivated. I mean, I'm motivated to get results. I'm not motivated to do that, but that's where people get stuck, and I think that's where motivation's crap, and I don't like it.
I remember the first time I heard somebody mention that in that same kind of that same way was Tony Robbins, who was talking about your rituals. He's like, everybody's got rituals, everybody's got habits, and it's like, and he was going off about the fact that if you just basically grind it out for about 30 days, 30 to 60 days, and you just get into a groove. And he's like, after the 60 days, don't reevaluate. He's like, just make it harder. And I'm like, all right, cool. It's kind of like you can kind of build on that, right? But it's almost like that foundation has to be built off of something. You're right. It's kind of like that emotion combined with the motivation gets you going. And then on top of that, you're like, all right, cool. Like now I'm doing this every single morning. And then if I don't do it, I don't like the way I feel. So now it's almost like the emotions are now working in your favor because they're telling you, it's like, bro, you should be doing this. And now I'm not going to give you that dopamine hit that you usually get after the gym. So go get your fix, and you get your fix the right way.
And I think I did get it from Tony. I probably stole it from Tony Robbins too, so I will give him the credit there. I mean, I agree. It's just like you have to grind it out. You just have to grind it out. Now the hard part for people is like they won't even attempt to grind it out because something's stopping them and trying to figure. And that's where the thing comes in. It's like grind it out, but I need to get you to the grind it out phase, and I need to get you there. And that's kind of where I think the missing piece is to get people to that grind phase. Because I feel like a lot of in the fitness industry, it's like I'm not that I am this person, but I think it's the Michael Jordan effect or the Kobe Bryant effect, where they are so good, they have such a ridiculous mindset that they don't know how to teach anyone else. Kobe Bryant cannot possibly comprehend someone not working as hard as him or whatever it is, because he's that guy. He just does it. Versus someone else who's like, well, I'll kind of work hard, whatever. And I think that's the hard part. It's like, okay, like a lot of people, it's hard to teach people this. As someone who's in this, I'm like, how do I teach people fitness when I am just someone who loves this stuff? And so it takes a lot to realize like that's my self-awareness. I am that person who just does it because it's easy for me and I love it. And I had to learn how to teach it to someone else because I'm like, what do you mean you can't bench? Just do it. Well, I don't know how. What do you mean you don't know how? I'm like, it's just like really, and like learning that, and that's that's part of the journey, is like making sure people can start to learn that, because they don't necessarily understand it, and make sure you find yourself a good instructor who does understand it, because a lot of them don't have that self-awareness necessarily to be like, I am that person who has a trouble teaching, and learning to outgrow that is a very important part.
Yeah, and you know it's interesting too. I think one of the greatest teachers for me has been having children. Because I'm like, what do you mean you can't dribble? What do you mean you can't this? What's wrong with you?
Go to the bathroom. What are you doing?
Exactly. But it's kind of like one of the biggest things, like teaching my kids concepts that I personally hate, right? It's like, okay, I'm not big in math, but I'm like, all right, I'll sit down. Then I realize I got to figure it out. And then for me having to figure it out, now I got to reteach it to somebody else who's depending on you to teach them exactly how to do something. It's almost like it humbles you to the point where I'm like, all right, these concepts, I'm teaching a kid in grade 6, well, grade 7 now. So I should know this, but I don't because I forgot it all. And then I'm like, okay, let's go over this again. So you got to teach yourself, then reteach it to somebody else. And then that kind of does change your framing of everything, because it's almost like it humbles you first, right? And when it took me to something that I am not good at to teach it to somebody else, now you're like, snap, okay, I understand where you're coming from. And now the vantage point completely changes. And I think another thing, like for fitness instructors, anybody that's involved in something physical, it's almost like try something new. It's like if you've never done MMA, try MMA, try boxing, try something that's going to take you out of your comfort zone, and then try to reteach it to somebody else or not, or just take the experience of how hard it was to just learn some very basic movements. Because what it does is it humbles you, man. And when you get that humble pie, you're just like, okay, I understand. I understand what they're talking about, right?
Percent. And like, yeah, kid is probably the best example, right? Because it's like, when do you stop peeing yourself? When do you start going? Like, when do you like? When I don't have kids, I don't have to deal. I haven't had to deal with that. But that's going to be an interesting challenge. The one day when I do eventually have kids, that'll be an interesting challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is, too, it's like they look at you as, hey, man, you're the one that's supposed to know this. And there's certain things where you're like, shit, I don't know that. So I got to figure this out. And it's like in figuring it out, I got to teach it now. And it's almost like you got to do it with humility, right? And it's like, all right, well, let's figure this one out together, kind of. Okay, so we'll do this, X, Y, Z. And you just kind of go from there, right? But I think any new concept, it's almost like just reminding yourself that, as a human being, person you're trying to teach is also a human being, and you almost meet them in the middle. That's kind of where that humility factor comes in, right? Because you're almost like you're able to see that, hey, you know what? This concept is foreign to somebody. Maybe I should remember that when I'm teaching somebody that's not an expert in fitness, and I am. It's almost like I got to reframe certain things in my mind to remind myself that, hey, not everybody spends their entire life looking up like some boring ass books on how to cook or make, like bodybuilding food taste better. People don't care about it, but you do. And that's kind of where you have to make that difference, I guess, to really say, hey, if I want to get this guy to get to where it is that he wants to go, I got to make sure that I'm coming at it from a place that's, I guess, loving to say it best, right?
At least understanding and like
Yeah.
empathize with. I was in grad school years ago, and I had an instructor who was the VP of finance for the Chicago White Sox.
Wow.
Cool. I'm like, wow, this is dope. Like, I get to learn from this guy. And I've never, it was accounting 101. Like, it was very basic level accounting. I've never taken an accounting class as a trainer. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. He came in and like was going over stuff, and you get the acronyms, and I'm like sitting there like, dude, I've never like even, so I get up after class. I'm like, yo, no, I didn't say yo, but I didn't say that. But I'm like, hey, is there any way, did I miss something? That I like, this was in the introduction, it says accounting 101, right? This is number one. And you're throwing out a lot of stuff here I don't think a lot of us understand. And I'm like, and I know like this is your world, but like we're being introduced to your world. So I'm not sure, like, do I gotta do some extra studying? Like, is there some, like, can I get a pamphlet with all these acronyms you're using? Because I have no idea. And he took that in a very positive light. I didn't blame him. I was like, hey, do I have to do something here? I'm going to fail this class unless I understand what you're saying. And he basically, like, the next time we saw him, like, he dumbed everything down for us. And he's like, he realized that, like, yeah, I literally do this with, like, hundreds of millions of dollars of contracts every year, and got to figure out the receivable, the payable, all this stuff. And he's like, I forgot that you guys are not doing this. And it's like, you guys are very much not in this field. So being able to almost not be humble, but at least be accepting of the fact that when you train someone, when someone's new at anything, there's going to be a massive learning curve potentially. And good instructor, a good leader, a good trainer is able to see that and then utilize that in a way that's beneficial for the client.
And I think that's huge because it's almost like when you are able to understand the client, and again, it's like you'll throw things around like ROM, it's like, time under tension. It's like, what are you talking about? Because it's almost like it's a different language. It's like listening to lawyers speak where I'm like, bro, I don't know what you're talking about, man. Hence the reason why we hire you to figure out these contracts, because I
Yeah.
have no idea what's going on here. But it's like, to your point, it is all those acronyms and all the different things you throw out. You're speaking a different language, right? And you literally are trying to get people onto the same page as you. It's almost like, okay, I gotta, meet you way down here. But one of the things that I want to discuss with you, somebody that is trying to get into, like, let's say they're trying to get to the best shape ever. It's January, the time is now, as they, want to believe. What's one thing you would recommend for somebody who just maybe is on their own but wants to get started right now? It's like, hey, you know what? You actually want to change your life. How would you go about doing that?
There's a lot I would give someone. So I'm going to try and give you as many as I can quickly so it's not overbearing and hit them later. So, number one, overarching principle is there's two ways to learn something. You have time versus money. Time is I'm going to go to Google, YouTube, podcast, and I'm going to learn from experts. It's going to take me 10 times as long, but I'm going to learn it. So let's say it takes a year, right? So if I do it myself, it'll take me a year to do this. Okay. But I'm not going to spend a lot of money. It's all going to be free stuff. If you don't have the time, you got to spend some money, and you have to hire someone who is a lawyer, doctor, teacher, dentist, coach, whoever field you want to get into. So say coach in this example, someone who understands what you need and they obviously are good at what they do. Hire the coach. It will take 10th of the time to at least get your knowledge base and maybe even get results than it would if you don't do it with someone. So you have money versus time. Money will decrease the amount of time you have to spend, and time will decrease the amount of money you have to spend. So just understand that there's that kind of relationship there. So if you're like, do I need a coach? Well, how much time do you want to spend learning this by yourself? Because there is a curve. I'm going to, the coaches will show you which fork in the road is out or where to go or how to do this. There's a tree over here. Come over here. But if you're just getting started, right here, number one, as I would ignore every single influencer online and any self-proclaimed guru. And the reason is that it's not that they're wrong. There's just too much conflicting information, and it's too specific. It's too specific to a generalized goal. It's not, and that's what you want to do. When you listen to an influencer, what you're doing is you're going to, let's say it's a 20 chapter book, you're going to chapter 18 with reading 1 through 17. And although it might be useful information down the line, it's not useful right now because we're not talking about what you want to do. Not everyone, but this is a good general rule of thumb. I have 3 principles when it comes to getting started. Very simple, very easy to do. And this I find is that has been true every single time I've trained someone. Number one, if you're going to get started, do something that's consistent. Be consistent with it. If you can't do it for a year, you probably should not do it at all. For example, if you're going from 0 to 5 workouts in a week, starting right now, bad idea, don't do it. You need to work your way up. Most people will burn out after week 3 and be done. I'm too sore. I can't do this. I'm going to quit. And then they wind up 6 months later on their couch. How did that happen? And then you start over.
Yep.
So consistency. So start small consistently. And then progression's key number 2. Progress your way up. Start with 1 day a week for the first 2 weeks. Then do 2 days a week for the second week. Then 3 days a week for the third and fourth week. And then by a month and a half, you're at 4 days a week and you build yourself up. Same with time. If you don't work out and you go jump into an hour workout, you're going to burn out. Start with 25 minutes, 30 minutes, right? Whatever you can do, start with it, build your way up. So consistency is number 1, progression is number 2. Last step is patience. So let's say you're 40 years old and you're 80 pounds out of shape. You're the person, right? Whatever you are. I had a client when I first started out, and this is when I was really mean. So I don't recommend this. So this is the kind of guy I am though. I was like, and I have learned from this, but it's a bad story. The client was like 45 years old. He needed to lose like 50 pounds, and he was working with me for 3 weeks, and he's lost like a pound. Okay. And he, comes in one day just fuming, highs like, Scott, I've been working with you for 3 weeks. I paid you all this money, which again, like, we're talking about personal training money. 10 years ago, it's not that much. But I'm like, okay. He's like, I'm not seeing results. This is ridiculous. So I sit him down. I said, look, you're obviously frustrated because you want to see results quicker. The issue with this, okay, is that this takes time. You are creating a new lifestyle and you are creating, a new routine that you have to follow. It takes time. Your body is not going to just randomly adjust overnight. In 3 weeks, I expect you to be down 3 pounds, but it is what it is. Like, it'll take time. So I said this. I said, how old are you? He's like, I'm 45. Man, that's great. So let's assume you were in shape at 20. And that's when things started, okay? Which is right around when it did. It took you 25 years doing it your way to get to where you are now and you're not happy. Maybe give me more than 3 weeks to reverse 25 years of damage that you've done to your body. And so patience is my third key. It basically, you need to understand this is not a month goal. This is not a year goal. This is a 40-year goal. This is a longevity goal.
Yeah.
Your health should be, I know it's, by the way, I know it sucks. I know it's not what you want to hear. I know it's not the right, I know no one wants to hear that. I'm very much aware, like, that's a shitty answer. But you need to change your perspective on, oh, I'm gonna live 225 and have abs. Okay, then what? Once you hit that goal, what do you think is gonna happen? You're gonna stop. You're gonna revert back because you have nothing to shoot for.
Yeah.
But if you're shooting for, I want to live a high quality life and achieve all these other things along the way, you're more likely to see and maintain that success long term. But you can't be thinking in the course of months or years. You got to be thinking in the course of decades. And so patience is key. You're gonna, if you're trying to lose 40 pounds, you can do that in 1 year. I'm not saying you can't do that. But what I'm saying is the longevity aspect of what you're trying to do, you have to do it for 20, for 2, 3, 4 decades, so that you can have these long-term benefits. Now, maybe you're 50 years old, you only need 2, whatever it is. But the point is, patience is key. You're not going to see results overnight. They will come, though, if you follow the first 2 steps of consistency and progression. So that would be my biggest piece of advice. I don't care what diet you're on. Eat whole foods, eat healthy, avoid processed foods, work out at least 3 times a week. I mean, the basic stuff is tried and true. It works, okay? And along the way, don't worry about it now, but along the way, you're going to learn, oh, I need to increase the bench press, or here's how I do this exercise. Oh, that exercise looks cool. I'll do that. Oh, actually, I like this meal over this meal. I'm going to do, and just eventually you're going to learn and you're going to keep getting better and you're going to progress your knowledge base. As you progress your knowledge base, your results will increase at a proportional rate as well.
And the big thing too that you mentioned there, it's almost like that physical understanding of who you are. Because a lot of people, they don't really know who they are when it comes to themselves in the gym, right? It's like they don't know how they're going to react or respond to certain exercises. But I think what you said right there, the biggest thing that the biggest nugget of information that people could take out of what you just said there, which I think is beautiful, and I always tell people the same thing, maybe in a nicer way than what you did 10 years ago, but it's like, hey man, you got to this point and it probably took you longer than a decade to get here. It's going to take us longer than maybe a year to get you out of here. Or obviously we can fast track it, but it's kind of like, the body's interesting in that sense too. It's like if you want to lose weight fast, you'll probably lose some muscle fast. So your overall body composition is going to look kind of strange, which is not something we're after. It's like we want to preserve as much as possible. But interestingly enough, like whenever you do, I know when you do body recompositions, right? People are always kind of like, well, what kind of voodoo is this, man? Like I lost 10 pounds, gained another 5 pounds again. Now I look fantastic. Like I don't understand this. And it's like, well, it's because you got muscle mass on your frame, right? But there's different concepts where it's almost like you got to get people outside of their own heads and just kind of view it from a different perspective. And that patience key, or that patience factor, I think is by far the most important one. Because I mean, for myself, like I did a bodybuilding contest last year, right?
Congratulations. That's tough, man.
It was hard, man. I'm not gonna lie. Like,
what are you lifting right now? I can't see. What are you lifting? I'm figuring, bodybuilding up, it's hard.
Oh, it was natural, so we're not as impressed. It was like, the enhanced guys, but it did men's physique, and even then, like you have to get ripped, right? And I'm like, holy shit, this takes forever. Even for myself, because you go into like uncharted territory. It's like I never had to get this low. Like I got down 174 pounds. And I hadn't been there since high school. I'm generally about like anywhere from 190 to 200.
I'm 174 now, so I don't know what you're.
Dude, it was so tough for me because I'm like all my life, and mentally too, you always view yourself from that perspective. Oh, I'm a big dude, I'm strong, this, and that. And now it's like, okay, well, you got to let go of certain things to get to that new composition, right? Patience, man. Patience was the biggest factor into me being successful, or for me just laying it all out and then just saying, you know what, I quit. Because it's hard, man. Like, even if you're already in great shape, but you're going to push yourself into something brand new that you've never done before, patience is going to be a massive factor. It's kind of like I see you got the Kobe poster there. You don't think Kobe probably thought of, boy, hey, you know what? I'm taking 5,000 freaking shots a day. The man did it patiently and just kind of did his thing and just got in the groove. And eventually what happens is I kind of feel like, and give me your take on this. Do you think patience and momentum kind of work hand in hand?
That's a great question. I've never been asked that question. Like, my show is half on momentum as like part of the tagline. Do I think patience is directly involved with momentum? I do, yeah, because if you don't give yourself time to build momentum, then it's hard to actually get it going. So so I do think there is some sort of correlation with being the more patient, for example, the more patient you are and you keep taking action over the course of time, you're going to build more momentum than if you were not patient. So 100%, like, patience is directly related to building more momentum over time.
Interesting. Yeah, because I mean, now that it's funny because I was talking to you and I was like, yeah, man, I feel like patience led to the momentum at the end of it. Because it's like at that last month, it's almost like you've been so patient with working at whatever it is that you were working at. It's almost like you get a second wind. And all of a sudden the momentum just kicks up again and you're like, okay, cool. Like I'm going faster, harder. But it's almost like that buildup is what led you there over the span of 3, 4 months of patiently doing what it was that you needed to do to get there in the first place. So it's interesting now. I'm like, that's interesting.
I like that.
And now it's like, getting that momentum and patience to work hand in hand. And I mean, honestly, when it comes to your clients, I guess that they kind of realize that too when you coach them through that. But another question that I had now is, what do you do when they're got everything kind of lined up, but they're kind of still in a rut halfway through? You've worked on the mindset, you've gotten them there, they're patient, and it's kind of like to your point, your client was there after 3 weeks. But what do you do if somebody's been at it for about 3 months or 4 months and he's just kind of not there? Is there anything that you throw in as far as motivation or momentum or something? Or
So yes and no. So with my coaching, with the way I coach people now, it's one of the things I don't like about the fitness industry, very specifically, and I'm a trainer, so I'm coming from it from an internal perspective, is I don't like that personal training relies on continuous sessions. Again, if it works for you and that's what you like, great, go for it. But I found that it's more valuable to the person if we work together for a specific amount of time, and then after that, you're on your own. Obviously, you can re-up and do all these other things, but like in that time that we work together, my goal is to teach you everything you need to know so that you can be self-sufficient.
yeah,
So, let's just say it's a 2-month program, right? Just for sake of argument, 2-month program. And let's just say they're having trouble at the month mark. Yeah, it's a matter of, it's that constant, we're rewiring how you, basically a paradigm, and use Bob Proctor real quick. If you guys don't know Bob Proctor, big mental
yeah,
mindset guy. And we have to change your paradigm. And if you're struggling with whatever aspect we're on, your body is pushing back on the shift that we're trying to make. And so it's making sure that we can empathize, making sure that I can keep pushing you forward and I can attack the root cause of what is actually causing you to have this rut. Why are you in a rut? Well, seriously, why are you in a rut? Oh, I'm not where I thought I should be. Okay, let's stop you right there. Where did you think you should be right now? What was your expectation? And let's talk about this expectation. It's so common, if someone has a journey, right? I want to lose 40 pounds. Okay. And I'm going to do it in 40 weeks. So 1 pound a week. Okay. And on week 20, they're only down 15 pounds. Now they're pissed. Now they're angry. And now they're like, it's not working. This thing sucks. I'm not seeing the results I want to lose. But the reality is it was your plan that was screwed up in the first place. Because if you think your plan is going to go, or I guess losing weight, going like that, and there's not going to be any sort of mountain or jump or stock market style jump there, then your plan was incorrect. Your plan should have accounted for missteps along the way. And so this month mark for this avatar client, we just didn't identify there was going to be this mental slump, and now we can attack it. And it's just he didn't realize it was part of the plan in the first place. This slump is part of the plan. We knew you were going to not be, you're never going to be 100% the whole way through. There's always going to be slumps in the season. And so I think it's mostly just making sure when they're with you, it's attacking those slumps and really breaking down as best you can and teaching them, here's what you have to do. Obviously, if you're with a personal training client and you're there 3-4 months, I think the approach is very similar. It's, hey, what's going on? But most trainers, I say this from my area of expertise. Again, some trainers might be like, oh, I do this, whatever. I'm not trying to call anyone out, but it's, I work with you and I'll see you in 3 days. I work with you and I'll see you in 3 days. There's not this, and there's some trainer, especially if you're in a big box gym, there's not this like, hey, let me talk to you. Let's talk it through, whatever it is. That's not what personal training is meant to do. It's meant to just, I want to work out with you so you can work out and I'll see you in 2 days. I'll see you in whatever it is. It's not this coaching thing versus coaching where it's like, hey, I'm going to work with you or you'll get through this. So I think it's constantly attacking the negative thoughts. Your negative thoughts are going to creep in every single day, period. End of story. So it's in that day where you have a major slump, it just happened to creep in a bit more than normal. And it's our job, my job, to make sure, okay, how can we get rid of this? How can we get you back on track? And I think it's just asking the right questions and making sure they understand, hey, we're doing well. You lost 15 pounds. Like, look how well you're doing. Like, let's calm it down a little bit. Let's dial it back. And what were your expectations? Do they make sense with reality? and how do we change your perspective if they don't make sense with reality?
Yeah. Which makes perfect sense. I mean, going back to your point, that's kind of why I hated being a trainer in a big box gym. Because when I first started, I was there. And I
Of
mean, what
course.
they wanted to do is resell. And I'm like, well, I'm only selling this guy in sessions, but we can't sit down and talk about diet. He's like, that's not your job. And I'm like, oh, okay. It's like, hey, man, I made him a workout and I was going to send it to him. He's like, that's not your job. And I was like, wait, do we really want this guy to get in shape or are we just trying to keep him here for as long as possible? And he's like,
Money, man, money.
yeah, man. And it's kind of like, that kind of is when I came to the conclusion that I don't want to work in a big box gym. I'm like, I can't really help people. I'm like, I can help somebody for like 45 minutes to an hour and that's it. And it's kind of like, that's where I'm done. I'm like, yo, to me, I believe that a good coach is somebody that's there. It's kind of like, hey, man, I'm about to go attack the buffet. I need help. Yeah, you want to offer me some pointers here? I'll be like, yo, man, reach for the protein, and then, have some green tea prior, do some, we're going to apple cider vinegar and then just go for the protein, man. And take a picture of your plate. All right, that's good. That passes, but it's almost like you want to coach people through these little instances because these are the make or break moments, right? And that doesn't happen in the gym. In the gym, man, it's kind of like, I think that's the easiest part. It's everything else for the other 23 hours of the day. How are you
Yeah.
sleeping? Are you drinking water? How's your stress levels? When it comes to actual, like, I don't know, because I think like health, fitness, all that, it's such a global thing when it comes to the body. It's not just one thing. And it's not exclusive to just, oh, I just went and worked out for an hour. Now my life's going to be great. I'm like, no, it's like, it's one of the factors involved, but it's not the only one, right? And that's kind of why I don't know. I see the fitness industry in the same way where it's almost like they want to keep people just coming in like Planet Fitness model. Like when I looked into that, I was kind of like, I was pretty upset when I read about it. It's like we get pizza, people are all out of shape. You tell them they're beautiful, but they're not, it's or not that they're not beautiful people, but it's just kind of like when you are in certain, like I saw like the whole body positivity movement. I'm like, these people are dying, man. These people are dying from obesity. It's like, come on.
No, I totally agree. I mean, it's there's a look. If you number one, first off, I'm very clear. If you don't want to get in shape, don't do it. Like I don't know what you're like. I'm not for. It's not a force thing. It's like if you want to get in shape, here are some things that you want to do. If you want to be whatever you're doing, you're happy and go for it. I don't care. But just understand like the whole idea of oh, well, I'm going to the beauty aspect. If you're obese, you are more likely to die sooner. It is a fact. It is your body cannot handle what you're doing to it. If you're okay with it, great. Live your life. If you're not okay with it, you may want to make a change. And it's just that simple. And you might want to look at where your change is coming from. I think there is a time and place for personal trainers. If you've never lifted a weight before, I am not your coach. Like I won't be able to help you the way an actual personal trainer will, because they will actually teach you how to physically lift. And that's not what I do, right? And if you need, and some people love that accountability. They won't work out without someone. And so I still have clients. I still have personal training clients where I see them twice, 2 to 3 times a week. But that's what they want, and they know they want a trainer. They're gonna pay the money, and they don't give a shit. They don't want any thinking. They don't want to deal with it, and that's great. But then you have everyone else who's like, I want to live a healthier life and I don't want to have a trainer forever. And I want to, and I think that's what that middle ground is. Like, you got to do some work. You got to put it in. It's the other 23 hours. Like, I think it's water, sleep, and physical, right? Like, it's physical is eating, working out, water, sleep. And I add the mindset into mine. But like, those are the main pillars of like getting in shape and living a healthy life. And I think you mentioned that pretty well.
Thank you. And I mean, the thing is, I think our philosophies are pretty much lined up. And most of the guys that I talk to, too, they're just kind of like, well, if you actually want to change somebody's life forever, I don't necessarily want it to be with me for the rest of my life. It's kind of like, I want you to be free, figure this stuff out and just kind of build on it. And sometimes it's interesting because I'll have clients that come back like, yo, bro, I want to push myself to the next level. I'm like, damn, all right. It's kind of like, okay, we'll step it up. What do you want to do? It's like, well, I want to do the Spartan race, or I want to do this, or I want to do something different.
Let's go.
Yeah, and I'm like, all right, well, that's cool. Like, definitely, I love coaching you for that. And it's kind of like, can get my macros lined up and this, that, and the other. And that's kind of where, to your point, it's all about leveling up. And it's either you're going to invest time or you're going to invest money. And I know that full well, too, dude. Like, I've dedicated so much time to figuring out, software and how to, like,
Oh my,
webs.
the amount of time.
You come to the conclusion that you're like, yo, I'm just gonna pay this guy. I'm not just like video editing. I'm like, here you go, man. Like, just help me out, right? But
What's I can't say this enough. That's the value shift, right? If someone doesn't want to pay for a personal trainer at first, give it a month, right? After you fail and struggle and you don't want to learn, you don't want to spend the time learning, you're like, Yeah, I get paid $1,000. Like same thing. When you start the podcast, the website, how to get all the little tech things, it's like I'm gonna do it all my own. How much was it?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that sounds better now. The value proposition changes for sure.
Oh, dude, sounds reasonable because you get your time back.
Yeah,
And I think time is
exactly. Yeah,
valuable. Like I was even reading this book, like The Wealthy, and it's like, what do the wealthy have that nobody else has? And it's like everybody's like, well, money. And it's like, oh no, time. And I'm like, oh. And then you kind of like when you switch that paradigm, like you said, you're like, snap. Now it makes sense. It's kind of like you bought back your time, right? And that's the beauty of it. And that's why I love doing this, and I love coaching people get into the best shapes ever. And I know you're the same way, man. But Scott, tell us more about where we can find you. But tell us all that good stuff. Give us all the plugs, man.
yeah. I mean, pretty simple. A website, scottspeaksfitness.com. There's some, everything's on the website, even the podcast. But the podcast is The Power of Progress, Mindset, Motion, Momentum, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube as well. So if you like the videos versus the audios, and then just Instagram, Scott Friedman. Do a lot of shorts and some content on there. But that's really about it, man. Just out there giving people information, giving people advice, and trying to get people in shape one person at a time.
Love that, man. And again, the links are always in the description below. And we'll see you guys in the next episode.